Hey everyone, and welcome. Ready for a deep dive into something pretty cool?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So today we're looking at how AI can help gyms like yours never miss out on another lead or sale again, ever.
Really interesting stuff.
I know, right? We're talking about this system called interactive calls, and it's got these AI-powered voice agents that handle, well, pretty much all your calls. Think appointments, questions, anything really.
Sounds like it could be a game changer.
Seriously, imagine your gym basically being open 24/7, even when you're catching some Z's.
Now that's a thought. Gyms face a real uphill battle managing all those calls, with limited staff and all.
Oh, absolutely. And the folks at Interactive Calls, they get it. Their materials, they actually call it missed calls, lost profits.
Catchy title.
It is. And they don't hold back. They paint this super clear picture of how much money gyms are leaving on the table.
Yeah.
All because they can't answer every single call.
Ouch, that's gotta hurt.
Right. Get this. They're even saying some gyms are losing up to 50% of their potential revenue because of missed calls. 50%.
Whoa, that number definitely gets your attention. I mean, we'd obviously want to look into those claims a bit deeper, but it does highlight a real problem. In today's world, people want answers, and they want them now.
No kidding. Think about it. How often do you just hang up if you're stuck on hold forever or get hit with a dreaded voicemail?
Oh, all the time.
Right. And it makes perfect sense. If someone's calling your gym all pumped to sign up or whatever and they can't get through, well, they're probably just going to call the next gym that picks up.
Makes total sense. And it's not just about new clients either. Think about your members, right? They might be calling with questions, needing to reschedule a class, or even just to report a problem.
Yeah, you're right.
If those calls aren't handled quickly, people get frustrated. Frustrated people cancel memberships.
Definitely not good for business.
Yeah.
So what's the solution? What are these interactive calls people suggesting?
Well, it seems like their big idea is these AI-powered voice agents, right? Like a super efficient receptionist that never sleeps, 24/7 availability.
Okay, so no more missed calls. That's the promise. But can an AI really handle all the different calls a gym gets? What about the more complicated stuff? Things that need a human touch.
It's a valid question, for sure. AI is not magic, but it's getting pretty darn good.
Yeah.
These systems, they're designed to handle a lot. They can have these detailed scripts, answer common questions, book those appointments, and even figure out if a call needs to go to a human later on.
So it's not about replacing people entirely, but more like using AI to make things smoother, making sure no call slips through the cracks.
Exactly. And it frees up your staff to handle the stuff that really needs that human touch.
Makes sense. Their materials mention they can integrate with over 3,000 different platforms. How important is that?
Integration, oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
If it can't talk to your gym's management system, forget it. It needs access to member info, schedules, all that. That's how you make it feel personal,
Gotcha. And they really push the instant updates too. If you change your class schedule, the AI knows right away. No more retraining staff every time something changes.
Huge time saver. The fitness world moves fast. New classes, new memberships, it's constant. AI keeps up, no problem. Always gives out the right info, no matter what.
Okay, so we've talked about how this AI could tackle all those missed calls, but what about actually boosting revenue? How do they claim to do that?
Well, besides just snagging those new clients, they're all about efficient scheduling and follow-ups.
Less no-shows, less cancellations.
Exactly. It's like having a super proactive staff member, always sending reminders, confirming appointments, keeping people engaged.
And all that leads to
more money for your gym.
Makes sense.
Right.
All right, this all sounds pretty impressive, but let's be real. Sometimes these marketing materials, they promise the moon. What are some of the downsides? What should gym owners be thinking about before jumping all in?
That's where a little healthy skepticism comes in. Lots to unpack there. Yeah, I mean, it's always good to be a little cautious, when it comes to these things.
For sure. So what are some things to watch out for? I mean, what should gym owners be really thinking about before they go and invest in a system like this?
Well, first off, you've got to think about the costs, both the upfront investment and what it'll cost to keep it running.
Right.
They talk about saving you up to 50%, which sounds amazing, but, there's the cost of the technology itself, then probably integration with whatever systems you already have, and maybe even some staff training.
Yeah, it's not like you just plug it in and boom, AI is running your whole phone system.
Exactly. And even though the AI can probably handle a ton of calls, there are still going to be times when you just need a real person.
So it's not completely hands-off.
Gotcha. Right. You'll still need some humans around
Yeah.
to handle the tricky stuff, the stuff that needs a personal touch.
Makes sense. What about how customers feel about it, though? I mean, some people might get kind of freaked out talking to a machine, especially if it's something important, you know?
Oh, absolutely. That's a really good point. It reminds me of those times you get stuck in those awful phone menus or you're talking to a chatbot that's just totally clueless.
Oof, the worst.
I know, right? It's frustrating. So gyms really got to think about how they roll this out. Transparency is key. If you're using AI to handle calls, just be upfront about it, you know?
Yeah, just tell people, hey, you might be talking to an AI, but don't worry, we got real humans standing by if you need them. Something like that.
Exactly. And it's important to remember AI is not a finished product, you know? It's always getting smarter, always improving. What works today might be totally different in a few years.
So gyms that jump on board, now they got to be ready to keep learning, keep up with the latest and greatest.
For sure. They got to stay on top of it.
Okay, so we've talked about missed calls.
Yeah.
We've talked about AI as a solution. We've even touched on some of the challenges. But before we wrap up, I'm curious about the money side of things.
Yeah.
How does Interactive Calls actually think they can save gyms money and boost their revenue?
Well, their big argument is all about cutting down on staffing costs. You know, things like salaries, benefits, all the money that goes into hiring and training new people. They're saying if you automate a big chunk of those calls, well, you can potentially cut down on those expenses significantly.
So instead of a whole team of receptionists answering phones, you could have an AI doing a lot of that heavy lifting.
Exactly. And they're also really banking on the idea that you'll bring in more revenue if you're not missing out on leads. Every missed call is potentially money walking out the door, right?
Missed calls, lost profits.
Bingo! They're saying fix that one problem and boom, your gym's making more money.
It's a pretty compelling argument, I gotta say.
Oh, for sure. But of course, gyms need to really crunch the numbers, you know, weigh the cost of setting this whole thing up against how much they could potentially save and earn.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Every gym's going to have its own unique situation.
Absolutely. And to their credit, Interactive Calls does offer different pricing plans, you know, depending on what features you need and how much support you want. So there's some flexibility there.
So a smaller gym on a tight budget, they might choose a more basic package. A bigger gym with more complex needs, they might go all out.
Exactly. That's why it's so important for gym owners to do their homework, you know? Figure out how many calls they're getting, what kinds of calls they're getting, and what their budget really looks like before they commit to anything.
This has been a really interesting deep dive. I mean, we've covered a lot, from the headache of missed calls to the potential of AI and even the whole financial picture. What's the big takeaway here? What do you want our listeners to really walk away with?
It really comes down to this, you know, this technology. It has the power to totally change the game for gyms. It's not just about answering the phone, it's about running things smoother, making your customers happier, and yeah, ultimately bringing in more money. But like we've been saying, you got to be smart about it. Really think it through.
Absolutely. So for our listeners out there who are maybe thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but is it right for B? Is it right for my gym? What advice would you give them? Where should they start?
Well, I'd say the first thing you got to do is take a good hard look at how you're handling calls right now. How many calls are you missing? What are people calling about? Are there things you could do better? You know, maybe even fix with technology.
Get a really clear picture of what's going on before you even start looking at solutions.
Exactly. And then don't be shy about asking questions. You know, call up companies like Interactive Calls, get a demo, see how it works, talk to other gym owners who've tried it out. The more you know, the better decision you'll make.
It's like anything else in business, right? Do your research, know your options, and then choose what's best for you.
Yep. And remember, AI, it's not standing still. It's getting smarter all the time. What's out there today might be totally blown away by what's coming in a few years. So you got to stay curious, keep learning, and be ready to adapt.
This has been a fascinating look at how AI could change the way gyms do business. I mean, we've covered a lot today. I hope everyone listening feels like they can take that next step. You know, maybe do some more research or even think about trying it out in their own gym.
It's an exciting time for the fitness industry. That's for sure. Technology's changing everything, and there are going to be more and more tools out there to help gyms succeed. But it's the gyms that embrace that change, you know, that adapt and stay ahead of the curve. They're the ones that are going to win.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI and gym revenue. We hope you found it useful and maybe even a little inspiring. Until next time, keep exploring, keep innovating, and keep pushing the limits of what's possible in your business.